machines, the War Machine Hordes show that strives ever onward to issue 100 at speed 4. In this issue, we'll have another showing of Lieutenant Allister Caine, who will face off against Ravyn, the Eternal Light. The mission is killing fields and the point size is 35. Afterwards, I'll cover all the remaining tournaments I went up to now, and including ClockCon. Enjoy! So Caine got his ass kicked by Jarl after poaching his mate, and what does a man do in such a condition? Yeah, it's back to the bar time. After going to another city and finding a nice club, the evening was taking a nice turn when he got flirty with that bootylicious chick called Morvana. When his recently ditched girlfriend Ravyn kicked down the club door in a fury only a scorned woman can muster. After a fully boosted, blasted shot from Hellebore and an obliterated bar later, the club owner throws both of them out to settle their stupid business in the streets. Both gathered their friends, and the heat was on. Ravyn's gang consisted of herself, Discordia, 2 units of Stormfall Archers, a full unit of Mage Hunter Strike Force with Commander, Lady Aeana and Master Holt, and 2 Mage Hunter Assassins, as well as the Soulless Elven Hooker. By that I mean Iris Experienced, not the Soulless Escort Service. Those dudes at least know where their loyalties lie. Caine's Gungho Gunz came with a Defender, a Hunter, a unit of Gun Mages with Dude, a unit of Rangers, a minimum unit of Trencher Commandos, the Black 13th Gun Mage Strike Force, the Squire and a Gun Mage Captain Adept. Turn 1 goes to Ravyn, and she wastes no time ushering her army across the board in that typical elf woman hysteric fury screaming. Most stuff advances, Discordia pops its protective anti-blast field, the Stormforce both move up and snipe shoot. The left-hand ones drift miserably against the Rangers, but the right-hand ones kill 2 commandos and blast off the gun arm of the Hunter. There goes a prime asset of mine. Iron Holt stealth up, Ravyn moves and slaps snipe onto the Mage Hunter Strike Force. In Caine's first turn, he allocated 2 to the Hunter and 2 to the Defender. First, the Gun Mage Captain Adept moves up and tries a shot at Iris, yet misses. Gun Mages move up, but a little timidly, so a number of them are out of range for their shots. No favorable dice mean no dead Mage Hunter Strike Force. Then the Commandos move up and try carbine shots, those that are close enough at least, but they also miss. When moving the Hunter, I overestimate its gun's range and his movement way too early, so he's stuck with all the focus that I gave him. Caine activates, moves laterally and puts snipe on the Rangers. They then move and shoot at the Stormwall Archers across from them, taking out the 2 cool guys, which makes the other 2 fail command. The Defender waltzes up and hammers around to Discordia's field, sadly. The Squire waddles up behind Caine and the Black 13th runs up through the forest. Ravyn turn 2, she upkeeps snipe and allocates none. The left Mage Hunter Assassin runs towards the Gun Mage Captain Adept, who has a good chance of ousting her in return. The right Mage Hunter Assassin charges the Hunter and cleaves it in twain. The Stormfall Archers stay put and shoot the Commandos, which happen to be stealthed too, so the arrows miss and only take 2 of them out, and the Mage Hunter Assassin for good measure. The remaining 2 guys don't exactly care, they've skipped Comradry 101s twice. Then Ravyn goes, moves up, does her best Chester Bennington impression, while commanding the Mage Hunter Strike Force with hysterically gyrating arms to finally quit their slacking this instance before putting Veil of Mist down should this go wrong. The Strike Force, slightly annoyed, moves up and starts putting crossbow bolts into Caine. Due to high defense and mediocre dice, it takes 8 of them, but then Caine goes down. Ravyn wins! What happened afterwards? I don't know. Why don't you decide? Like this video if you want her to laugh like a maniac, satisfied with her revenge, and then leave him to bleed until the medics show up and carry him to the hospital. Or dislike this video if you want her to act like an emotional turncoat and go full on, oh no, what did I do to the love of my life? Either way, I'll take the plot from there. In hindsight, I was warned this was the Ravyn list, and I can see why. This must have been what it felt like for Viper when he had to play against my Vladimir experience during Mark 1. Not exactly a game, isn't it? But I go through the steps anyway. VIP were the Rangers, because they killed some stuff, nothing else. VUP was the hunter who got his gun arm blown off again and then died to the Mage Hunter Assassin. My biggest blunder, I think that was letting him go first. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. If I went first, my units would have been a lot closer to threaten the strike force. Sure, the storm force would have claimed losses, but decimating the strike force puts the key to this list has, and I would at least have had a real game. Changes to the list. Oh, there are a number, and I'm thinking about trying them out next time I choose to field these guys. Drop Rangers, Squire and Commandos to go full on Sons of the Tempest. Hello Blazers. Those that have shown these stupid elves. The last 5 points would give me a M&tM. Or else also swap the Defender for another Hunter and drop the GMCA, get another Arcane Tempest Gunmage unit with free dude and be right at tier 3. Or keep the Blazers minimum and retain the Black 13th. Bam! Tier 4 at 35 points with Blazers. Oh, this is so happening. But for now, let's head over to the rest of the show. Enjoy! Alright, in this instance of the faded black t-shirt, we're going into Oversoul. Because this has been dragging on for long enough with enough lag. I will try my best to highlight us through the games while the pictures keep us company. Let's put us through it. First up, the 5th bunker brawl in Oberhausen. I had brought a classic though non-standard infantry heavy Irusk list, as well as a non-tier Zerkova list with more jacks. First game, I'm up against Gueron with Trollbloods. He decides to field Borka with the list you can see here. Highlights that I can still remember are Irusk with Iron Flash and on a hill gets massively shot by a massive NIS CRA and lives on. My pikeman trapping the Diatroll bomber behind a wall. The Impaler frenzying into the Troll bouncer and the bouncer frenzying into the objective. Cossite Woodsman pestering the Creel Stonebearer unit. And none of us scoring any control points in the 2012 incoming scenario, which can be classified as ridiculous. And his clock running out while the display of his mobile was dark. This made it impossible for us to figure out whether it did that before Irusk died or after. He's offering me victory, but I'm feeling gracious and I don't take it. The TO comes over and we agree on a coin flip. Guerin wins and I go to the Cool Kids Club. Second game, I get to face Kriegsspieler, whom you probably read from if you traverse the Cater board. The man's in love with the Ulans. He's got Kato with him, so do I. At least I don't have to ask any questions about his stuff. It's Irusk versus the Butcher, and I get to face a Colossal for the first time in 2012's Envelopment to boot. Highlights here: his Iron-Fleshed Kayazi being taken care of by Manhunters and Yuri, and Iris experienced. My attempt to unclog my pikemen from them via airburst costing me pikemen, so I have to reconsolidate and deal with those first. My Kayazi taking care of his pikemen, my pikemen charging the Conquest on their battle last and utterly destroying its right side easily, his Conquest firing into the Assassin cluster, drifting off to kill one of his pikemen instead, and Ulans charging Irusk, but one of them dying to a free-striking Greylord's Rune Axe with a peak roll, which saves Irusk. And me actually scoring a control point and then running out of time. Last game is against Glebe, who's fielding Kato as well. I'm locked into Zerkova and he puts down Mad Dogs of War. Well, screw this. Let's see how well this can go. I make the mistake of giving him first turn. which he later advised me to never ever do against Butcher Experienced. He's at the flags turn 1. Highlights. My strategy to deal with the Doom Reavers works out quite well. Between the Greylord's sprays aimed at something without spell ward, the Destroyer's Bombard, Beast Thresher, Spriggan's Grenades, Harlan Bursch, the Pikeman and Oring Arcing Lightning from the Destroyer, I kill way more than half of them. This would have even been better if I had gone first. I had pulled out all the stops Signa and Krix taught me to, and they worked well, but he had me jammed out of the zone, so I lose by scenario easily. An 0-3 count! Move on to the next tournament! Next tournament was Born's second Cantina Games, and it was 5 games of escalating point size and army lists. I brought Harkevich and Irusk. Round 1 I face off against Lebray, who has Haley and Caine. I figure that Harkevich actually has the better game against those two. Highlights are: Ivan's damage dice are on fire. First shot blows off the Avenger's gun, second shot blows off the Avenger's sword, and his charge attack cleaves the rest of the jack in two. And the gun mage kept that running to deny me control points, and I'm unable to hit or clip him before dice down is called. And I win by points in the zone. Yay! 15 points. I won. Yay! Round 2, and I get to play against Krixsnoop. Again. Seriously, I feel that whenever I win my first round, I get to play him when he's around. Highlights are not that many. Deathjack Infernal Machine runs up to my Kayazi, who break. Ivan fails his charge on the Deathjack and gets eaten in return. During the feed turn, I run up and fire the Destroyer's Bombard via broadsides to keep the witches honest, and lose on scenario. Round 3, oh, I didn't even take a picture of that. Oh, there were just too many unpainted models on the table. So here's a picture of the non-war machine part of the cantina. At any rate, I'm up against Dictator, with Dick probably being as in Cheney, and his Protectorate. Irisk versus Severius. I can't remember the scenario, but it's not important anyway. I lose to the Avatar of Manoth and that strange player habit of putting focus on the card instead of next to the model. Blah. Round 4, and it's Carter versus Trollbloods, Irusk versus Madrex Experienced. Great, I never played him before, and it's Incursion to boot. Sadly, I forgot my opponent's name. I'm sorry. Highlights are Blood Frenzied Digmies going into the Spriggan, not Irusk, and not really achieving much. I was very afraid of by both Femblades and Long Riders on one flank, but my Kayazi, without the help of Iron Flesh, jammed them like champions. Another highlight was run to engage and move defensive formation plus feed got me into my opponent's grill and kept me there for the most part of the game. I thought Grim Salvation was once per turn. Turns out it's not. And it's not optional either. And Madrex Experience's feed also gives him not one attack with a weapon, but one against each target he is in melee with in case of a melee weapon. Woohoo! Madrex XP rushes himself and hacks down Irusk. Illegally, as I found out after the tournament. Well, that happens. Round 5, and I'm up against Kodiak78 from Cologne, who's also playing Cardo. It's 2012 Restoration, E-Sorsha vs Harkevich. I love that among my highlights was that he looked at my lists and goes, well, that's 2 lists I don't want to play, which is kind of an indicator that I did something right with the list building part. And my plan actually works. Stroll up to the objective, apply bombards to face. He has to come to me because he can't score before he hasn't destroyed my objective, and when he tries, I'll just feed and get the hell stuck in because I outmaneuver him for the most part. This would have even worked better had Sorsha's feed not been completely face-wracking and my damage rose a little better when trying to get those bombardiers out of the way. Who ever heard of bombardiers surviving anything? And we eventually lose via assassination, but I think I can safely say that I had a decent shot at winning this game. Well, that tourney was 1 win at last, which means I go 4-1 and score lower than Fiona, who manages to eke out 2 tiebreaker wins and thusly wins 3-2. Brr. On to the next tournament. On the penultimate day of the year, 2 years after my wedding, 2 days after my wedding, sorry, there was another bunker brawl in Oberhausen, and it probably was the last one before the location had to close down. I don't have any pictures from the event, so I'll just read out my notes that I took afterwards. I only played Harkevich that day. Round 1 versus Harbinger. Actually went quite well, even though I think I feed it too late. Slam is a plausible measure against Enliven. Round 2 versus Butcher Experienced. Lessons from 5th Bunker Brawl well processed regarding going first. Had I remembered my own threat ranges correctly, I would not have lost. Never start the game on a full bladder, that is actually some very good advice. Consider adding a commander model to babysit Widowmakers. Round 3 versus Run. When Mage Hunter assassins come a flanking, put Harkevich another half an inch away from them just to be sure. Because one of those actually took his head clean off with perfect rolls. We decided to keep the game result, but we fudged it and had a more interesting game anyway. Also, when going second, put neither infantry nor heavies to their respective annihilators. So the year ended on a respectable 0-3. Great! I think all in all that year I went what? About 117 or 216 at best? A really poor showing results wise, even though I don't really feel like I played that badly. Which is one of the downsides of the Swiss system being used, but... So maybe the next year will smile on me. Which brings us to... the ClockCon. I report on 3 tournaments there. I actually played in 4, but doubles... That's not a serious tournament format. Way too silly, way too much Haley experienced. What you're seeing here is from the Blood, Sweat and Tears tournament on Friday morning. I brought Zerkova's Hunting Wolves, a pretty mixed bag list, which you can tell by the Marauder. But I'm comfortable with it that way. In the first round, I'm up against Mikhail, who's fielding Kalandra's Children of Dunia. It was very nice seeing a non-standard tier, and he was a very relaxed and friendly player. Highlights this game were us not being used to time turns for over a year and a half in my case. I managed to stall his alpha most perfectly with my feet. I also kept the impact of his Earthborns in check with the Watcher Retreat move. And then his Digmies broke, but they couldn't run anywhere since one of my Eliminators was behind them. So they triggered Watcher 3 times, which got the Marauder right into Kalandra's face. And then, BAM! Holy crap, I think I just won round 1. And guess who I face in round 2? Yeah, Kriegsnoob. It's a common thing that Dutch events tend to be won by Germans. But no, we're not making World War or football references here. Move along. He's fielding Scurry XP at the Merchants of Death. Being a fan of both Thank You for Smoking and Iron Man, I approve that. Highlights are, he actually has me by the balls. This was a very good matchup for him, I think. Satixis can circumvent the Kayazi defense, and they've always loved Warjacks. The Kraken's first shot deviates to clip and kill the Greylords. Skara cuts herself for 5, targets Zerkova, the Vanguard, some more stuff, and then Zerkova runs for her life. And on the final turn, Skari camps for and moves behind the Kraken. My first thought was, on a 17, Skara dies. So Zerkova charges an Eliminator for extra distance, well, not quite, and draws upon the power of the Ghost Stone. Zerkova casts Razor Wind! The attack is super effective! At this point I need to work on to control the adrenaline rushes. Going 2-0 has never happened before and tends to get me way too jitty. Now I'm up against Anyu, who's feeling Ran and the fires from on high. That was to be expected sooner or later, but I thought my chances were actually quite good. And they were, indeed. Highlights are that very early my Widowmakers are in range of the left-hand Stormfalls and managed to take out one of them. Eliminators are closing in on the right ones. And some some triggered watchers set the Spriggan up to bypass the Hyperion, which was under Polarity Shield, to get to Ravyn, who then decided he'd rather be behind the Halberdiers. The Hyperion not advancing on his second turn really screwed me up. A more concerted effort rips apart the Halberdiers, and Zerkova charges one of them to get into Razor Wind range. The first of them misses by 1, the rest get him down to 6. He force hammers Zerkova, and I roll a 3 on the Orgoth seal. The sad part about this is, we are credited Force Barrier to add +2 defense against magic attacks too, which it doesn't. So I more or less had him dead to rights, had I only double checked, and that would have put me at 3-1. In the last round, I'm up a guy called Kenneth, who fielded Krios Experienced and the Crusaders of Ymir. Gah, that's a seriously bad matchup. Highlights from that game. My Widowmaker's manhandling all the Knights Exemplar on their own with some very good to hit rolls. I'm not kidding here. Nakayazi decimating a lot of errands in the zone before they get murdered by Krios' feet in return. Zerkova surviving the Fire of Salvation's first assassination attempt and taking some HP off of Krios for good measure before she went down. And Kenneth getting my Equilibrium reference within a split second. So, I went 2-2, which, while it could have been better, it's still unprecedented. That makes for a nice opening to this year. Could I keep up that pace? Well, we're just going to skim through the doubles pictures and get to the next real tournament. So Saturday evening I participated in the Hydra tournament, where you build a 40-point list and brought 6 casters. Which one you played was randomly determined at the beginning. In the first round of that, I played against Tim, who rolled up Severius, and I got Harkovich. The one thing I wished for in that game was, surprisingly, Outriders, because they would have messed up those Zealots big time. Harkovich mainly fell to being on fire when the Zealots were unengaged by a single fragtastic ashes to ashes. In the second round I got the bye, which allowed me to get a game in against my wife. She was playing Gorton, I rolled up the Butcher, and we went against each other very relaxedly. I had a very much jammed with iron-fleshed bobbing Winterguard and just charged the Butcher in on his feed turn when the start of the next round was called and we had to cut it off. In the third round I was facing against Vincent, who rolled up Asphyxias for his horde of Mechanithralls, and I rolled Sorsha. My two biggest concerns there were the 3 Mechanithrall units and the Deathjack. I did manage it quite well. Ivan tanked, dodged the thralls on the left, the assassins first jammed, then Kill struck to stab the Necrosurgeon and Stitch thralls, a very smart move, and Soldier freezed the right hand unit. I did, however, fail to deal with the Arc Node appropriately, and Sorsha went down to 2 Arced Breaths of Corruption. Clock on Sunday had a 50-point steamroller where I brought out Harkovich and Zerkova, since I'm championing them this year. Originally, the Zerkova list was a Hunting Wolves tier, but I swapped that to include the Silas and Reinhold machine. Round 1 I'm up against Mark and the Retribution. He puts down Ran. Scenario was close quarters. Highlights were: the Destroyer shot at Skirith Isian, fell short, drifted onto Iris, and boosted blast damage blew her off the field. Sentinels closing in on Zerkova trigger Watcher and set up the Spriggan's charge lane to Ran. He tries to block it with the remaining Sentinels, but then the Destroyer nukes a single key model, Zerkova Razor Winds Ran for good measure, and he ends on a Spriggan's Lance. Woo! Another win! Round 2 it's against Brett and the Trollbloods, and he plays Borka. I only have this one photograph though. Scenario was Incursion. Highlights were: a Warwagon attempts to trample the Dracoon, I was playing Harkovich, but falls short and thusly gets countercharged. and charged over and over again in the next turn. The Spriggan, after failing his charge on the Mauler, lives through retaliation under Hark's feet and, in tandem with the Dracoon, gets Borka to make a tough roll, which he makes. And the Man-O-War Shock Troopers are being very good roadblocks between the Mauler, Malk and Harkovich, so I say, yeah, those guys, they paid off. The game ends with him winning on victory points destroyed, with me being very close on his heels. I think we were just 3 or 4 points apart. Round 3, I'm up against Casper, the Dutch champion. He chooses to field Cassius the Oathkeeper, whom I to that day had only seen on paper, and I plopped out Harkovich again in process of elimination because I think that Pathfinder is good to have against Circle and Armor too. Highlights are me trying to contact his feet the best I can by bobbing a few Winter Guard infantry into the forest and spraying them in the back, moving my jacks up, firing their guns with broadsides and feeding. But actually that wouldn't have worked as well. I killed a Tharn with that spray action, but since it's a forest, it blocks line of sight after 3 inches, and it's considered terrain. And if terrain blocks line of sight, sprays won't go through it. So sorry, Casper, I cheated you, Tharn with Blood Tracker. Well, happens. I don't think it won't. I don't think it mattered that much, because another highlight was the mortar firing at the objective, missing and deviating to kill 4 blood trackers, and the shock troopers withstanding some serious punishment and killing the feral warp wolf with a free strike. However, Casper wins on scenario because he manages to take to control the zone and earning more control points than me at the end. When Dice Down was caught. And in my last game during the convention, I play against Vincent, who puts down Chromac, and I fielded Zerkova in outflank. That is a different Vincent than the one from the Hydra. Highlights were that he overcommits his Stalker to get into my Widowmakers, which then gets charged by Kayazi assassins and gets killed on the dot. The Widowmaker Marksman one-shots a Wolf Rider, which was very funny, and the Greylord Turnian Remainders wipe the freaking floor with the Blood Trackers in a row of 7s, 8s and 9s. Then Chromac goes for the assassination, but the dice are not with him. A Trampling Gathrix misses his back attack on Zerkova, and Chromac himself also doesn't get it done. Being stuck between Ice Caging Greylords and Zerkova, he goes down. So I'm again at 2-2. Holy smokes, this year is starting off really well. It'd be awesome if I could keep that level of results up. At this point, I'm at 5-9, but I'm not getting my hopes up. So, if you're still listening, thank you for bearing with me. I know this must have been quite unamusing since I'm not that great a player, but I hope it was entertaining nonetheless. Next issue will feature a special and very fun matchup, and we're ready for issue 80. We're getting ready for issue 80. But until then, farewell.